Kalahurka. NBC 41 is proud to bring you Volume 3 of Kansas City Crossroads. Here you'll take a ride on a high-speed wooden racetrack, the Kansas City Speedway, and you'll meet many of the characters who played an important part in the history of our hometown. People like George Kessler, who transformed this cow town into a majestic city on the bluffs, and a wonder dog named Jim, who kept the entire town of Marshall, Missouri spellbound. So sit back and let us tell you a few stories. And thanks for watching Volume 3 of Kansas City Crossroads.
Woven through time, a tapestry of stories defines who we are and gives us a sense of place. On NBC 41, this is Kansas City Crossroads.
In 1880, Kansas became the first state in the nation to prohibit alcohol. But even though alcohol was illegal, during the next 20 years, Kansans struggled trying to enforce the law. Hello, I'm Bill Kalahurka for Kansas City Crossroads. In 1900, a 53-year-old grandmother from a little town in southwestern Kansas embarked on a campaign against alcohol that earned her a place in history and a nickname, the Smasher.
At one point said she counted 7 dives, as she called them, or joints, as she called them, in Little Medicine Lodge, a population of 1,500 people, and it has 7 liquor joints, even though they are patently illegal.
Because her first husband had died of alcoholism, Carrie Nation knew firsthand what alcohol could do to families. Her campaign against alcohol began quietly enough by calling on drunks in jail.
But do not despair. The Lord does not abandon us in times like this.
The first thing that she did was simply to go to the jail herself, and she would talk with the jailer, and she would talk with the men in jail, and simply plead with them to give up alcohol.
The Lord be with you, young man.
Carrie Nation is unstoppable. She begins with the county sheriff. The county sheriff ignores her. She goes to the county attorney, and the county attorney ignores her. She finally writes to the governor of the state and said, look, it is illegal. The people of Kansas have voted, and you are ignoring the vote of the Kansas people. And the governor ignored her.
Determined to be heard, Carrie Nation enlisted a stronger voice.
One of the things that she would actually do is to go down in front of the bars and kneel down in public, and she would pray that the bartenders and the bar owners would see the light.
The devil's brew is served!
And only when she has given up on trying to persuade them closed, trying to pray them closed, and trying to insist that the law be enforced, only then does she take the law into her own hands.
Gathering rocks and wrapping them in cloth in an attempt to conceal them, she sent her message through the front window. Her smashing attacks against illegal bars lasted 6 months, ending in Topeka the night of February 17, 1901.
And she attacks in one night a bar, a warehouse, which stores liquor equipment, and a barn.
Carrie Nation continued for the remaining 10 years of her life to travel all over the country speaking against liquor, though she never lived to see national prohibition, which passed in 1920. She died in 1913 and was buried near her family in Belton, Missouri.
One of the things that women in Kansas and women nationwide learned from her is that women can and should and maybe must speak out for the things they believe in.
Hello, I'm Bill Kalahurka for Kansas City Crossroads. Deep down, we all would like to leave a legacy. Legacies are built over time by living each day with conviction for what you believe. That's not easy day after day. And in Kansas City, few people have done it with more vigor than Ewing Marion Kaufman. Today on Kansas City Crossroads, we reintroduce you to a man whose guiding principles have left an indelible mark on our city's heart. Treat others as you want to be treated. Share life's rewards with those who make them possible. And give back to the community. Ewing Kaufman, more than most people, understood the deep meaning of those words. Life's lessons started early.
when he had what we now call rheumatic fever, when he was age 11, he actually laid on his back for a whole year because that was the only way to treat it then, and his mother made him read the Bible cover to cover twice in that period of time. His mother was the most influential person in his life. She would say when she sent him off to school in the morning is, there may be kids that have more money than you, but no one is better than you are. And she'd say that to him every day as she sent him out the door.
Kaufman became a confident young man, determined to succeed in life and as a pharmaceutical salesman.
He was so successful being on commissions that he made more money than the president did. So the president cut back his territory, and they promoted him to manager and put him on overrides for the people that worked with him, and soon thereafter he again made more money than the president, even with smaller territories. And so they again cut back what he could make, and he said, sorry, that's not being fair, I'm going to go start my own company, and that's how he started Marion Laboratories.
In the early years, Kaufman's laboratory was in his basement on Locust Street, where he ground up oyster shells at night, labeled the bottles, and took orders during the day.
Oscal became the leading calcium supplement in the country, and I believe still is.
Kaufman built Marion Labs with a culture focused on treating people fairly and rewarding them for their performance, qualities he fostered also with the Royals.
Mr. K was always really committed to Kansas City, and it's a city that nurtured him, developed him as a youngster, and it's a place where he became very successful. And again, Mr. K is a person of great loyalty, strong commitment to people who helped him become who he was, and certainly the Kansas City community was that.
Today, Kaufman's legacy continues with his foundation, dedicated to nurturing entrepreneurship and helping youth in the city's core reach their full potential. For Kansas City Crossroads, I'm Bill Kalahurka. Hello, I'm Bill Kalahurka for Kansas City Crossroads. Here on Kansas City's west side, people often speak the name of Mattie Rhodes, a young woman with a big heart who died in 1890 when she was just 19 years old. Mattie Rhodes left a legacy that teaches us all about the lasting power of giving. Mattie Rhodes belonged to Mrs. Trumbull's Sunday school class at the Central Presbyterian Church.
She was identified as a leader at that Sunday school class and helped those young women identify charitable or good causes in the late 1800s. When Mattie was 18 years old, she came down with typhoid fever, and she knew that she was going to die. She and her family had money, some money set aside for her through her savings, and she told her mom that she wanted her money, which was $500 at that time, to be given to the Sunday school class. And that Sunday school class called themselves the Little Gleaners. After her death, those young women continued to raise money.
The Little Gleaners decided to help mothers who needed daycare for their children. Organized as the Mattie Rhodes Memorial Society, they invested Mattie's $500 along with additional funds they had raised, opening the city's first day nursery in 1896.
The families and the mothers were charged a penny to 5 cents to have their children stay at the Mattie Rhodes day nursery. Ledgers were kept, the names of the families were entered in the ledger, the amount collected, and sometimes no money was collected. That's why society members raised dollars to cover the needs of those mothers and children. Children were given nutritious meals and snacks, and they were involved in playful activities and creative activities, but they also had an educational piece to go along with it.
From the beginning, the center was more than a day nursery, responding to whatever the neighborhood needed.
Right after the Depression, the homelessness, people needing to get assistance and needing a place to live, Maddie Rhodes turned into a settlement house.
Today, Maddie's legacy continues. The Maddie Rhodes Counseling and Art Center still is serving children and their families.
Who would have thought that her gift and her commitment to helping others would still be alive today for others?
Water, water everywhere, and not a drop fit to drink. From the very beginning, Kansas City's fortunes have ebbed and flowed with the river. Hello, I'm Bill Kalahurka for Kansas City Crossroads. During our city's infancy, waterborne illnesses such as cholera claimed the lives of nearly half the population. But in 1875, thanks to some incredible engineering, Kansas Cityans tasted their first drink of truly safe water. Starting with just 12 miles of water mains and a capacity of 5 million gallons per day, the city's first waterworks started pumping water to a city bursting with possibility.
When they decided to do the water treatment plant, the waterborne illness was a major concern, as well as fire protection. At that time, there was no fire protection, so along with the water mains came fire hydrants.
After the first 12 years of operation, the water source shifted from the Kaw River to the sometimes treacherous and moody Missouri River. As the city grew, so did its needs for water.
In 1925, the city decided they wanted a bigger water treatment plant, and they began working on what is the treatment plant that we still have today, and they began building a tunnel. Since the new water treatment plant would be north of the river and a large population was still south of the river, they would have to somehow supply them with water, so they began building the tunnel, which was 300 feet below the river bed, and through bedrock and by hand to transport the water after it was finished, and they were able to pump water from the new water treatment plant through the tunnel and supply the entire population of Kansas City.
The largest and most expansive project the city had ever begun took tons of dynamite to blast through the bedrock, and a courageous crew. 8 men lost their lives in the effort.
They would go down and blast out of it, but they also had to have, we had to ensure that they had enough oxygen. We were 300 feet below the surface, so there were fans and pumps to constantly circulate the air throughout the tunnel. And at that time, they still even used a lot of horse and mule teams to assist with the project.
36 months later, the city had a tunnel under the Missouri River. 3 miles long and 7 feet 6 inches in diameter. The tunnel carries up to 100 million gallons of water each day. Another tunnel was added in 1993, parallel to the original tunnel, where water still flows underneath the mighty Missouri. Today, our dependence on the river is greater than ever. A thirsty Kansas City consumes up to 140 million gallons of water each day, delivered through 2,300 miles of water mains. When we turn on the tap, we know the water is fit to drink. For Kansas City Crossroads, I'm Bill Kalahurka. Kansas City, coal town. Doesn't exactly fit, does it? In fact, one of the few reminders that coal was mined in Kansas City is this street, Coal Mine Road. Hello, I'm Bill Kalahurka for Kansas City Crossroads. Today we discover a piece of Kansas City's past that was once a thriving part of the industry of our town, but is now virtually forgotten. The Brush Creek coal mine opened in the 1880s and, along with several other mines in the area, created a bustling industry.
With the railroads coming into Kansas City from all directions, Kansas City became, and for many, many years, was a huge railroad center. Probably as a result of that, or because of the availability of coal, it became a large coal industry center
Kansas City quickly became a regional headquarters for the manufacture and distribution of coal, generating an annual output of 14 million tons. Workers of those mines were often exposed to dangerous conditions that even had an effect on their families.
Then in the evening we would generally sit and listen to the radio programs, and my dad would usually be cleaning his carbide lamp. And you get used to the odor of carbide, and you never forget it. To a coal miner, or any kind of miner, his light is a very important tool, and they make sure that lamps are going to be clean and work good. He brought the dinner bucket home, of course. He would hand me the bucket, and I'd eat the rest of the pie. At the time, I thought it was just something he was doing for me, but I found out later that that was a tradition of miners to do that, to bring the kids home something in their bucket. Some people think it was psychological, that if he left something based on his superstition, that he had a better chance of surviving and getting home that night if he had a little treat in there for his kid.
The mines in our area began to close in the 1940s when other fuels replaced coal as a power source. Environmental issues of the 1970s made burning coal unpopular, but its place as a part of the history of our town should not be forgotten.
It's a part of the heritage of this area that I think should be recognized.
When the circus came to town, the news spread like a canopy over the neighborhoods of northeast Kansas City. Hello, I'm Bill Kalahurka for Kansas City Crossroads. During the 1930s, 40s, and into the 50s, the circus found a home here, just east of Montgomery Wards. In this park at the bottom of St. John, hundreds of children got their first glimpse of the magical world of the big top. The circus blew into town in big trucks and railroad cars, dozens of them, and it took a crew of nearly 300 to unload it all. Ross Cassio says watching the circus go up was a bigger show than the circus itself.
It was better to see them put the circus up than it was to go to the circus. See them put the tents up. And it was just a lot of fun. And all the kids from the neighborhood were there. It was our thrill of the year, watching the circus come in and talking to the animals.
Youngsters watched spellbound as men carried the gigantic poles that would hoist the huge tents.
Of course, being a youngster, it's amazing the size of the tents. And of course, as you get older, the sizes are not as large as they appeared to be at that time. But they just seem like they're a city block in size.
Once the tents were up, it was showtime. To generate crowds and excitement, the circus paraded 3 or 4 miles down St. John.
You followed the parade to the circus, and you were part of it. You knew the clowns by name. You knew the animals by name. And there was just more excitement.
The ringmaster, in his velvet top hat, fanned the flames of excitement.
You had a 3-ring circus, had 3 different things going on at one time. So, you were doing good to watch any one of them. But you'd have the clowns in one of them, and of course you'd have your lions and tigers in the other. We were amazed how these people, the clowns and performers, would ride their bicycles over the high wires, and wondered how they stayed up there. Make us a little dizzy just watching them.
During the 50s, the circus stopped pitching its tents in the Northeast. The indoor comforts of places such as Municipal Auditorium proved more popular.
Well, I really think that took the excitement away from the circuses. Well, because we didn't have a lot of setup. You weren't going to watch it. You didn't see the parades. The circus performing in an area such as Northeast just really excited everyone because it happened in their neighborhood. And I think a close-knit community was caused by the gatherings at that circus.
For Kansas City Crossroads, I'm Bill Kalahurka. Over the course of our country's history, hundreds of thousands of soldiers have put their lives on the line for the sake of freedom. But imagine fighting for that freedom and not being able to enjoy it. Hello, I'm Bill Kalahurka. Today on Kansas City Crossroads, the trail of the Buffalo Soldiers through our nation's military history, and how, in spite of the sacrifices they made, the dream of freedom remained for them just that, only a dream. From the Civil War to the World Wars and beyond, African Americans have marched lockstep into battle alongside white men.
The war, they came from pride, and they were trying to prove to America that they want to be a part of it. And they want to not only win the physical freedom, but they want to win the respect of all the other Americans.
Buffalo Soldiers were given their name by the Cheyenne Indians after the Civil War.
Because the hair on the black soldier's head reminded them of the name of the buffalo. It charged into the enemy with the head bared and the saber in front of them, and they did not give any ground.
These black Civil War veterans were called back to duty to protect pioneers traveling the western frontier.
Simply because the pioneers that were traveling on Santa Fe and Oregon trails needed more protection. So they said, well, we'll use the veterans out of the Civil War, the blacks.
The Buffalo Soldiers secured a reputation that was legendary. During military conflicts between 1868 and 1898, the Buffalo Soldiers earned 23 Medals of Honor, more than any other unit.
They earned such a good reputation because they stayed in the service. They did not desert, and they did their job well.
White officers consistently used words such as bravery, discipline, and endurance in their accounts of the Buffalo Soldiers. But despite their exemplary service, Buffalo Soldiers are frequently left out of the history books.
I have a chance now to try to get the part that they played in the history books to fill that gap.
On July 26, 1948, Harry Truman issued an executive order integrating the armed services and ensured that soldiers would fight together to protect America's freedoms. For Kansas City Crossroads, I'm Bill Kalahurka. From the earliest of times, man has entertained himself by singing and dancing and telling stories around the campfire. Hello, I'm Bill Kalahurka for Kansas City Crossroads. Over the years, theater has changed its address many times. It moved from the campfire to rooms above saloons to dozens of grand palaces such as this one, the Midland in downtown Kansas City. But today, precious few examples of the theater builder's art still exist. The first grand theater in Kansas City was the Coates Opera House, built between 1868 and 1870 on what is now 10th and Broadway. It welcomed ladies to the theater audience and made theater a social event. Sometimes theatergoers left their shoes muddy from the unpaved streets in the lobby. Fire destroyed the Coates House on January 31st, 1901, just 30 minutes after closing. Dory D'Angelo describes the beginnings of Kansas City theater.
Of course, the wonderful theater was the Willis Wood, and it was on 11th and Baltimore on the northwest corner, and its outside looked like an ornate palace from Europe, but its real claim to fame that there was a tunnel underneath it, and it cut diagonally across the street to where the Baltimore Hotel was on the east side of Baltimore at that point. And during the act breaks, gentlemen would go into the tunnel and go across to the hotel to the bar and have a few drinks. And quite often it was said that when they came back through the tunnel to take their seats, they weren't exactly sober.
Because we were on the circuit that included St. Louis and Denver, many performers took a bow in Kansas City. George Burns and Gracie Allen, Ed Wynn, Sarah Bernhardt. Live theater began to take a back seat when movies appeared shortly after the turn of the century.
But there were 100 movie theaters by I think 1905 or so in Kansas City, many of them in the neighborhoods. And certainly some of them were in real theaters. They just put sheets up against the wall and projected the movies there.
People lined up around the block for tickets to see the first talkie with Al Jolson singing.
When the person came to a movie, as they walked through the lobby, they were completely removed from their world by the ornateness of these buildings.
A few of Kansas City's grand theaters have been restored to their original grandeur, and live theater is once again center stage.
If you walk in the outdoors and see the leaves turn and hear the birds, that's rapture. You can also get that in the theater. From a high note that is a pure sound, from a jump that a ballet dancer does with such grace, and from an emotion that an actor displays and you participate in a play. I just think that's marvelous.
Since before the turn of the century, travelers passing through Kansas City have stopped here at the Savoy. The site of one of the city's oldest hotels, it is also home to another gem, the Savoy Grill, whose specialty is the taste of history. Travelers stopping at Kansas City's Union Depot in the West Bottoms could hop a cable car for the ride to the Savoy Hotel at 9th and Central. Its turn-of-the-century elegance offered comfort to cattlemen and grain merchants, as well as stage personalities.
The Orpheum Theater was directly across from the northwest corner at 9th and May, and a lot of then famous actors stayed here. W.C. Fields, Marie Dressler.
And Harry Houdini, who had a memorable visit at the Savoy.
He made a phone call from a public telephone booth. And in those days, the public telephone booth had a door that folded in the middle. He went in to use the telephone and he closed the door. Somebody put a broomstick handle through the pull handle, and that, in effect, locked him in the phone booth. Well, he couldn't get out of the phone booth, and he was very mad about this.
Let me out of here right now! I am Harry Houdini. What are you doing? Get back over here!
They finally let him out, and he came out fighting mad. Probably the first time he's been tied up and he couldn't get out.
Through the years, politicians and power brokers have held court in the grill room at the Savoy, where women were not allowed until 1907.
We used to have a small private dining room in the second room. It could seat 6 or 8, and it had a doorway leading out to the south hallway, which was an exit. And when you sat in that room, you could see the front door of the grill. A lot of people like to sit there because if the wrong person came in the door, they could make a quick exit out through the small door in the dining room.
Harry and Bess Truman liked to stop at the Savoy on their way to the theater downtown. Booth number 4 in the grill room bears a plaque honoring Truman.
They often ask me, what did Harry have for dinner? Well, he liked pot roast beef, pork chops, simple things in life. Once in a while, he'd have a little bourbon and ranch water, as he'd call it.
The Savoy has weathered the hard times caused by the flight to the suburbs, partly because of its legendary service.
Very common to have somebody come to work here and stay 8, 10, 12 years, 25 years.
Today, the Savoy Hotel is being restored as a bed and breakfast, and the famous grill room is expanding to 6 dining rooms. Its classic elegance still beckons hungry travelers to savor a taste of history. For Kansas City Crossroads, I'm Bill Kalahurka.